Hello and welcome to this new podcast that we are starting.
Yes, hello.
This is, I'm Jimmy. Nice to meet you all.
And I am Tom. This is our second attempt, actually, because I screwed up the audio. So,
It's fine. It happens constantly.
Good. Well, we're excited to talk about Steven Universe.
Yes, thank you for reminding me that I have to intro the podcast properly, otherwise people won't know what's happening.
What the hell is these guys talking about?
So, yes, if you are somehow not aware what you clicked, or are confused in general, welcome, you're in the right place. This is our Steven Universe retrospective rewatch podcast, where we will be rewatching every episode of Steven Universe in order, and doing little podcast sort of reaction, review, retrospective, whatever, all those fun R words.
Yeah, I am coming in hot from just finishing the series, Steven Universe Future specifically.
Yeah, we kind of all are.
Being able to talk about it might help me sift through my emotions.
As you are in need of.
Yes, after, good old cry.
Yes, so first I think we can just start by saying we are both fans of Steven Universe. We both enjoy it. I really like it. I've been watching it pretty much since it started. I think we looked at this up last time. I think it was 2010 when it started. Sort of a revival era.
To think about. Oh my god, 10 years ago?
Yeah, isn't that? Maybe it wasn't 10, but it certainly feels like it.
Definitely like around that. All right. I am going to look that up right now, actually.
Hell yeah. It's almost like we always have Google around and I just choose not to use it. But so, yeah, I'm obviously a fan of Steven Universe. Sort of warts and all. I will be the first person to admit. Okay, 2013. That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, okay, that was about to say.
That doesn't make too much sense, but whatever. Yeah, Steven Universe, I like it. Warts and all.
Yeah, I probably didn't start watching until like halfway through the original series. My friend recommended it to me constantly. And I just did not want to watch it because I thought it was just a cartoon about a fat kid doing random stupid shit. And then I watched like 3 episodes and I was hooked. So I very much love the series.
It turns out that you weren't wrong with your initial impression. There just is more to the show than just him being fat and stupid.
That is very true. Yeah. Well, how do you want to start this off? I mean, do you want to start talking about the first episode or just Steven Universe in general?
Sure. Well, if you have any sort of takeaways from the series in general, I think this is probably a good time since we will be spoiling things. So if this is your first time going through Steven Universe, this might not be the best way. At the same time, the era that we live in the internet, it's like, and Steven's a show that had a lot of internet hype. So it's impossible to have avoided a lot of these things. So like the fact that Garnet is actually a fusion of two characters.
Oh my god! We're like 3 minutes in, and you.
The fact that Jasper is the best character is not revealed until way later. Just kidding. I don't like Jasper that much, but it's so yeah, we are gonna. It's not like we're gonna go out of our way to spoil things like the fact that White Diamond is just like the worst handled of all the character villains.
I have thoughts about that actually. I mean, but that's the other end of the series. But yeah, like we'll be talking about the series as a whole. So if you have not watched it, why are you listening to this?
I've already spoiled like 2 pretty big things. So
yeah, and go watch it and then come back and watch us watch it.
Yeah, watch us watch it, and then also put it on while you're watching us watch it.
Yeah. Oh my god, just get Inception in there. No, so like, I really enjoyed everything that this series tried to do. Just we had mentioned it in the last one, but just the fact that I came in with such little expectation of the series because the reason I didn't want to watch it is because I hate that like just episode of the week like cartoon shenanigans without any cohesion.
Yeah, there's like no like real consequence. It feels like there's no real consequence to things because like nothing changes.
Exactly. So like when I started watching this and see that the characters actually have depth and go through emotional growth and there's a cohesive storyline and everything. I was excited to watch it as just as a cartoon, but then I was like, oh my god, this actually touches on a couple of really good, like, emotional and mental subjects.
Yeah, aside from all of the like pretty well handled deeper themes, I think there's a couple, and we'll get to them, where I think Steven fumbles a bit. Steven is in the show, not the character.
Yeah, yeah,
But I think it's some of the like it's Steven Universe's show that really rewards its viewers, and there's a lot of like pretty solid continuity and like I don't know. It's hard for me to explain it accurately, but it does build on a lot of things. It has a lot of respect for its characters, I think,
yes, yeah.
for the most part. I have to say that with like a caveat. I feel like there's a couple where certain characters kind of get
Well,
a weird shake.
some of the Beach City residents, especially, but
Mm,
no, like I think that Steven Universe really goes to great lengths to make you want to like all the characters too.
yeah.
Which is like a really nice thing. Like, aside from all the gem stuff, Steven's just befriending everybody, and it touches on these side characters that you might not necessarily see in like regular show or something of that era.
Yeah, it's funny. One thing I wanted to say, you brought up the whole thing with it's like your apprehension towards shows, at least at the time, towards shows that don't have like a continuity or like a sort of overarching storyline. Because it's funny that Steven, like, it started in an era when that was very uncommon, and now it's ending when I feel like people are kind of getting tired of this. Like, there are a lot of cartoons now that have sort of a shoehorned storyline where, at least this is just something that I've seen on the internet, a lot of people are like, kind of, you see this with like movies too, where everything's like a big universe now, everything's connected, and some
Yeah.
people are sort of thinking like, oh, it's kind of more fun when it's just low stakes, it's just like a sort of status quo show that I can jump in and watch any episode.
Yeah, and I definitely see that, like, that curve happening right now, because yeah, definitely Steven Universe started at a time where I feel like people wanted to get away from that, and so seeing like a kids show that shied away from that was like a big thing. But now, I mean, that niche has been filled
Yeah.
plenty, and so I think, like you said, people are starting to revert a bit. I always personally prefer a good storyline, but that's just me. And
I generally agree. I'm trying to think of like other cartoons from that time, or like around that time, like Adventure Time for sure did that. Adventure Time like had like a weird more. It was early on in Adventure Time. It was more of a lore thing. It was like all this background stuff, and like
yeah,
if you
which,
wanted
I mean,
to look into it.
I didn't watch Adventure Time, so I'm just going off of things that I've heard people talk about. But yeah,
Yeah,
I guess that makes sense. Like, opening up the universe.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where like they slowly started to introduce this lore, and there was a lot of like background, especially season 1. It was really exciting because it just felt like a really goofy cartoon that like any like sort of all ages thing. But then you start to notice like, it's kind of weird that there's like entire cities underground, like what's like underwater, like what's the deal with that? And like these are things that way later get like pretty big payoffs. But
Okay.
it's like it's not like Steven Universe where like I think it's a little difficult, at least at this time period, because we're so early in the series, and most of it is kind of this like monster of the week, for lack of a better term. But
Yeah,
later on
well,
is
and
when they
it's
start to like build and
and there's that
arcs.
specific episode that with Lapis that they really start to, I think, move forward with the actual like plot of the series.
Yeah.
Like when you realize, oh, these aren't monsters of the week. Spoilers.
They're friends. They're our friends.
They're other gems, and then you really get into like the lore of the war and everything. But that's all down the line. I mean, these first couple of episodes are just Steven introducing the characters, talking about them, and like you said, just monster of the week.
Yeah, and to kind of put it like a bow on this discussion, and we'll talk about the actual episode. One thing that I do think is neat about early Steven, in that people, I'm sure, like, I don't know if maybe this was intentional or if it was more of like an aesthetic thing, but a lot of the areas that we see early on, and not just like Beach City, obviously Beach City is like the setting for most of the show.
Yeah.
But a lot of the like places they visit in like these sort of one-off excursions, have like a relevance either like way later on, like we see. This is jumping ahead a little bit, but like the sun, or what are they called? The Earth and Heaven beetles,
Yeah.
um, like just become characters later on. There's a lot of like um intrigue and like kind of world building with some of the locations they go to, which is really it's interesting to me because a lot of it is very like um what's the opposite of like surface level? It's like it's not something
Sky level.
it's not something that the show really brings attention to, but if you're like paying attention to it, at least early on, it like it adds a lot to like what the gem culture is like.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Also
I
just
mean,
looking very pretty because the backgrounds are fucking gorgeous in the show.
oh, I mean, I think like we both agree that the art is gorgeous, especially the backgrounds.
Yeah, the
We'll
backgrounds
touch
are
on some of the
incredible.
early characters art in a second, but yeah, no, it's definitely interesting seeing the locations. Like they basically all come into play later, and I like that because you kind of learn like with Steven too, and as it affects his character, you
Yeah.
get more information because at first you're like, oh, this is just like a random mystical temple, but then you learn like, oh, this was our like television hub.
Yeah,
Like just like
he's like a classic like fish out of water sort of character where
yeah,
it's like a perfect for explaining things and explaining the lore because he is a baby boy and doesn't know anything.
just a sweet little Stephen Babbitt. Yeah, so maybe let's
Talk
dig into
about the
the episode
episode?
a little bit.
Sure. So this first episode, it's I believe it's called Gem Glow. I have to go check. I forget already. This is not good podcasting. But so yes, the first episode, Gem Glow, features my favorite character, Cookie Cat.
The best
He's
cat.
a intergalactic space hero cat.
And
Uh,
just right off the bat, going into that for a second, like the final episode of Steven Universe, kind of flashing back to that, I just thought was very nice. You know, nice little bookends there. With you can even like if you look at two of the stills from the episode when
yes,
they're all in the kitchen, it's like just about identical, which I just thought was great.
I really enjoy that as well. I like how I know like everyone. I shouldn't say everyone, but there's this like expectation to make like a big climactic finale. But I feel like Steven is such a chill show that it doesn't make sense for that to be the real finale. Like, of course, the movie is like, I guess you could point to that as being like the finale of the show, or not finale, like more of the climax of the series.
Yeah.
And then everything else is just going to fall out. But I really love the choice to have a very chill ending. Like, it just kind of feels almost like another ordinary day. Uh,
Yeah,
but yeah, not to go too much into the ending, but I like that you brought that parallel
yeah.
up.
And that's a great point. I mean, the show is not meant to be like this. You know, of course,
Epic.
there's action scenes and stuff like that, obviously. But I mean, it's meant to just be about the characters and their emotions and how they grow. So yeah, seeing it kind of end like that, like oh,
It's like we're in the
Steven's off
same
to
location with the same characters, but they've changed so much from this initial time that we see them in episode one, Gem
yes,
Glow.
yeah, like so much. But yeah. So I mean, that can go back to the first episode. Like Steven is a totally different character that he gets to the end believably too, but right
Yeah,
now
and
he is just a boy.
it's interesting to see like uh the way that he combats problems in this first episode is like it's he's dealing with like sort of a um like his expectations are messed up. Like he doesn't understand like the sort of cause and effect of like his powers and how his powers are connected to emotion. But
Yeah,
at the end of the series, I still really like how there's this sort of Steven is not perfect. Like Steven is still fighting with himself in a lot of ways and like his expectations and his emotions. And it just shows how like no matter how old you get, and this is something that I think like is extremely relatable to me and I'm
yeah,
sure a lot of people, it's like no matter how old you get, no matter how many years you've been alive, your emotions can still control you in a lot of ways that you might not want them to, but
yeah,
they still dictate
absolutely.
the way you behave.
It's constant growth. I mean, there's never a point in your life where you're like, I did it. Like I'm
I'm
good.
finished.
Everything from now on is perfect. No, like you're constantly developing, and emotions that you might have dealt with get replaced by entirely new ones. So yeah, it is interesting to see that there's not a point where he's perfect. Like Steven as a character will always grow, just like the rest of them. You know.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's just something that I think is a good idea to maybe at least try to do is just to do like a sort of recap of the episode itself, and it kind of will help us like remember to hit points.
Yeah.
This is a little bit of like inside podcasting. I don't know why I
Ooh.
didn't tell you about that earlier, but so all right, so we start. Steven Universe is at the Big Donut or Big Donut, and he's freaking out. He's so upset. His favorite ice cream has been, I guess, discontinued.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, shit, dude. Like,
Yeah, like
that's it. Like,
I've had this happen in my life. With the one that I always think of is back in the day. I'm sure a lot of children listening to this, not the children to listen to this, a lot of younger people will have no idea this existed. But Snapple used to have a mint tea. I think they got rid of it when I was like in elementary school, but I love this mint tea. It was so freaking good.
I'm not gonna lie, that sounds terrible. In my opinion.
I'm a huge fan of mint, of all things mint. So I love it, and so I can at least relate to Steven here. I probably wasn't as desperate as he was, or
Yeah.
emotionally distraught, but I remember looking back fondly at those times I could crack open a mint Snapple and chug that bad boy.
Deliciously minty, I guess. I mean,
But so yes,
toothpaste and water.
disgusting. But so Steven's favorite cookie cat, which it appears to be a like chocolate cookie sandwich with like it looks like strawberry and vanilla ice cream.
Yeah, it looks delicious. I'm just
It does
gonna
look
say,
really good.
I would chow down on that.
But so they've been replaced with lion liquors, which look to be those really shitty like ice creams where like you get it like ice cream truck and they're just the eyes aren't on right and like inferior to a cookie sandwich or ice
Though
cream
even
sandwich.
that gets a call back later, which is fun.
Yeah,
Lion actually comes around.
It's funny also how Steven's reaction to the lion liquors is like disappointment, and he's like, "Oh, this sucks," but in the future he will come to rely on his lion to crawl into and go places.
Crawling into the lion.
But so one thing I really like, and I mentioned it before too, I really want the little mini freezer that he has. He's so sad that they let him keep the mini freezer for the cookie cat, which looks super cool.
Yeah, and he's got to get those cookie cats back because he thinks that might help him with his powers.
Yeah, and he actually, at this point, he doesn't even have any. We later on, so he meets up with the gems and we get like our introductions to the characters. And we see that they, first they're fighting a bunch of centipedes, which are like, whoa, is this like an action show or is this like a slice of life show? At least that was my reaction when I first watched it.
Yeah, well,
because the action
kind of
is pretty cool.
Because they did that on purpose, like have it open with just a not monotonous, but like
very trivial
average
problem
situation. Yeah, exactly.
My
and then flash
gone.
cut to these gems fighting the shit out of monsters.
So in this scene, we get to see kind of a sort of first impression of each gem in the way that the weapon they use and also the way they fight. And I think it's a good time to talk about the character models of this first episode. So they look a little janky, and I think it's important to bring up in Steven Universe that there kind of aren't official on-model characters as we would think, and as most animation tends to have this idea of being on model. So there's like, okay, this is the proper way to draw a character. Steven Universe, for some reason, I'm not sure why, gives the storyboard artists a lot of freedom over how they design character, to like the minor details. Of course, they don't just like, it's not like there's an episode where Lapis's hair is like 3 times the size or something silly. Like you'd never see that.
But yeah, there are some definite discrepancies. But I mean, you could technically hand wave them away in universe.
It is true. You aren't wrong.
Yeah, at least with the non-human characters. But yeah, they definitely take some liberties sometimes. And the styles of each of the characters definitely develops as the series goes on, and they kind of solidify a little bit more. But
something that was characteristic of cartoons at this time too was this like hyper deformation that you see in the characters' like expressions mostly. I think Adventure Time was really the one that like popularized it. In high school I owned a shirt that had like it was like a 5x5 bunch of like cube of squares, and it was just a bunch of funny faces that Finn made from the show. And it's like I think that really just exemplifies. It's kind of funny because it's kind of like that's like a lot of like 90s humor was too, was a lot of these like close-ups and like really silly faces. We get a lot of really funny Steven faces in this.
Oh,
I think Steven looks really good for the most part.
Yeah, and very expressive, very
super animated,
yes,
which you like to see. Which you like to see in an animated cartoon. Pearl, though, I think Pearl suffers.
And let me just say, Pearl is my favorite. I love her. She's my favorite gem. Oh god, yeah, she just needed some help in these early episodes with her character design.
It's funny because I think that they really do nail Pearl's design down, and I'm not even talking about like the fact that it's funny when I rewatched this, I forgot about her costume change, and like she has the weird like sheer skirt, that I dislike on revisiting it. I really dislike that. It doesn't have to do with that. Her design really, it's like her nose and her face shape are like two very prominent parts of her character design, and they fluctuate greatly in this first season, and this episode is not one of the better ones. Her face is very flat.
Oh, definitely. Well, and like I think I don't know if they knew exactly how they wanted to treat Pearl just yet in terms of like I think they wanted to make her a lot more snooty than she was. Than she wound up becoming, I should say.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I just feel like they kind of almost reflected that in how they were trying to portray her early on, like that tall, lanky, pointy, like those sharp features, and because as she rounds out as a character, her model kind of rounds out a bit too, you know?
Yeah.
But Amethyst looked fine.
Amethyst is a character that I feel like everyone understands immediately, and even like the animators and the writers seem to agree. Like she's very static in the way that her design is handled, and also her character is handled as well. Not to say that Amethyst isn't great. Like early on, I didn't like her very much, but I think it sucks because we had a really good discussion about this in our Lost episode.
Well,
but
she rounds out the trio in the sense of like she's kind of the most down to earth of the gems.
She's the most human.
Yeah, she's the most human.
Earth, and she's born on Earth. She's like the most of an Earthling out of the three.
Yeah, and she doesn't get as much character development as the other gems throughout the series, which isn't a bad thing because you don't need every character to go through this huge, deep existential growth, especially when they're, like you had said in the last one, thousands of years old, and this is happening over the course of, 2 years?
Yeah, if even.
Yeah.
Forget how old Steven is at the end. Well, there is a bit of a time skip, too, between the movie and universe, so...
Yeah, no, but I mean, like, even just the original series, like, I know he goes through a couple winters and stuff like that, but yeah, like, so you don't need every character to have this crazy change and wind up being, like, pretty far off from where they originally were. So it's not a bad thing that Amethyst kind of, stays the same personality.
Yeah. She gets more developed, but she doesn't change, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Which I think is pretty cool. I think it shows a lot of, I think it would be very easy for a writer to just be like, okay, this character's their mentality has changed, so the way they behave has changed. But Amethyst is very confident about who she is, and she's very set in her own life. It's just about her coming to terms with her past, and which I think is probably handled the best for her character, at least. I mean, yeah, out of the things that are explored.
Oh, definitely. I mean, and then Garnet,
it makes her a lot more likable, I think.
Oh, Amethyst, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean. Spoilers again. I like how she was kind of the first of the gems that Steven fused with too.
Yes.
It just goes to show that, by that, their personalities were developed, and she was confident, and it was just nice. It was nice.
Yeah. I also I think that's definitely the best choice, even though I did really love seeing all of those other fusions.
Oh God, yeah, it
I
was just
love the
nice to see
fusions.
everybody.
We'll talk. We can talk more about how the fusion aspect is like the best thing in Steven Universe later. But
Yeah, well,
so,
when we
oh
get to
yeah,
that episode.
and so yeah, with Garnet, I think, especially in this first episode, so we see like each character kind of gets their own introduction because the whole conflict is Steven can't summon his weapon. Steven can't use his powers. He gets a
Yeah,
lot of anxiety over being unable to do it automatically. So he thinks he's like asking each one of them like, "Oh, how do you do it?" So we get like
yeah,
sort of a classic look into each character, with Garnet being the most sort of esoteric, like the
yeah.
hardest to
Just
really understand and for Steven to relate to, even though she
she's the
cares
most
for him.
alien.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
She doesn't really have any like human traits as opposed to Amethyst, who like eats food and likes to be silly and likes to like be a dick. Like I
Yeah.
like that she slices up. There's a part where she like is hanging out with Steven at the donut place and she slices up the dumpster and then Lars comes out and he says, "Oh no, not again." So this is something that she has done repeatedly.
See, and that's great. And then yeah, you have Pearl, who's just kind of like overly prim and proper and motherly at this point.
Someone who's like reached a level of perfection that she is like so confident in, but she cannot explain it. She can't like
Yes,
relate to Steven about it, so it's like just worth the waste of time for her to like talk to Steven about how to use her powers.
I mean, and this introduces like a lot of concepts that go throughout the entire series. I mean, especially at least until certain points in the series. Like right now, Steven really just wants to be part of this group because it's his family. You know, it's like having a bunch of like older siblings that are all doing really cool stuff, and you're excluded because like
Because
you're
you're
not
a
good
fat
enough to
little
hang
kid.
with them. Yeah, because you're shit.
Exactly, yeah. I definitely uh I don't know exactly if Rebecca is the younger or older. Rebecca's brother, who is named Steven,
Hmm.
and the namesake for Steven, also works on the show, and to some extent I forget what he
Oh, I actually
does.
didn't know that.
I don't know if you can kind of feel that sort of sibling, at least early on. I think a lot of people compared, and I personally compare the gems to more of like mother figures.
Oh,
But
definitely. I mean, like they definitely, especially turn into that. But there's that like he wants to be part of their gang, you know, their group,
yeah,
like, and you know, definitely the fear of having no control over what you're supposed to be a part of. Like, oh, you know, I have this gem, but
how
Lord
do I
knows how to
use
use it.
shield? So yeah, we also get the reveal that Steven's gem weapon is a shield, which is interesting that it sort of manifests itself on its own. Uh, I just think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
and rather than him having like a sort of control over it, and of course he doesn't have really control over it initially. And just to like wrap the episode up, like wrap the plot up,
Yeah.
Steven is he keeps trying to eat the cookie cats, thinking that if he shoves them in his mouth, he'll learn to activate his gem powers
Well, gain
and
their strength.
yeah, become gaining the strength of this cookie cat. And of course, it doesn't work. So he has to use other means. So he ends up like throwing the broken freezer at the gem creature to subdue it. So it's kind of just, I think it's this idea of like, and something that I was honestly shocked about Steven Universe early on was like, Steven really just does not get his powers for a very long time.
Yes, for a very long time. I mean,
And it's
eh,
about like being a human in these situations where humans don't have a right to be, and him
yes,
using his other ways. Like, I mean, we'll get
using
to like
human
cheeseburger
methods.
backpack.
Yeah, I
Cheeseburger
mean that
backpack's like a good example of this.
that solidifies it pretty much. But like, yeah, I mean, he's a squishy mortal human, like thrown into these situations that, like you said, he has no business being in. Because I'm trying to think of the episode that like he really. There's no particular episode. I would say. I think it's just like he starts to slowly develop them over time. You know.
Yeah, it's like by the end of like Steven Universe, like like before the movie, that's when it feels like Steven has really reached a point where of competence with his powers. But
Yeah.
even then, it's like a very slow like gaining it. It's in a way, it's kind of video gamey almost. Like I know video games are a big
Yeah.
inspiration on the series, but like how in a video game you like slow you get one power, especially I think a good way to look at it is like being a child playing a video game. when you're playing a video game, like it can feel like it lasts forever because you don't know what you're quite what you're doing. So when you get a power, it's like a big deal, and you spend a lot of time learning it. And then when you move on to the next one, it's like you have the same hurdle to cross, where it's like I have to learn how this whole thing works. And
Yeah, and then but like you know hours and hours and hours later, like you look back and you have this whole skill set that it progresses naturally, which is nice. And
yeah,
I really do like how they tackled Steven with his powers. I mean, like even like little things, like there was comments from certain characters when he's lifting stuff that like, oh, like you're strong for a kid because he's lifting like
hmm
fucking huge ass like sound set or something like that. But
I remember initially kind of being, I don't know if disappointed is the right word, but my expectations were not that the series would be about Steven like learning. So okay, we're talking about like Steven learning his powers as if it's like the plot of the series, which it definitely is not. There's so many. It's more about like Steven's emotional growth, I guess, is the way to talk about it.
yeah,
But
which
in
I
my
mean his
head, it was
powers
like,
manifest from that, so it's literally like it's
yeah, oh, they're
yeah.
definitely connected. But so it's to me, I was thinking like when I first saw this episode, if I'm trying to remember back, maybe I'm a little clouded by the years and years since, but my idea was like, oh well, Steven is gonna like unlock his powers soon, and then we're gonna see him fighting because at the end of the episode, he doesn't win. He subdues the monster for a second so that the gems can go and finish it off. So it still kind of feels like it's not Steven really doing it
Yeah.
himself. He's still relying on people, and he is really reliant on other people for like the entirety of the show. And I think that's probably one of the themes.
Yeah. Well, it's all about the people you surround yourself with, and it's coming of age for him. But coming of age doesn't mean I can handle everything. It's
Yeah,
I know when it's important to rely on others. And that's interesting that you say that though, because when I first started watching, I was drawn in by the gems more than Steven initially.
I was too, though. I definitely was too.
Okay, because I wanted to know like
They're
what
just really
they
cool.
were. Yeah, yeah, like
Gems are cool, dude.
they're cool. They were like enigmatic. They were just like I was like,
I
what
loved Pearl. I loved Pearl
are they?
initially because of her design. Like, I really stuck to that design. And I also love that she's like the elegant sort of like sword and spear
Yes,
character. I
I
think those are
definitely
fun.
appreciated that about her.
Sword
And
lesbians forever.
and the show kind of like slowly spoon feeds you tidbits of information early on too. Like again, like you know nothing really about the greater gem galaxy right now. You just know that hey, these are aliens and they're pretty fucking cool.
Um, you saying that just made me think of something like, so right now, all of the horrible things that are happening that Steven doesn't know about are still happening. Like the diamonds are like enslaving and like murdering people. And I just thought of it like, you know what really breaks my heart? Spinell. Spinell's just standing there right now.
Oh my
She's just
god, she
fucking standing
is.
there. Just doesn't even know. She's still waiting. She's still waiting. That really,
Oh my
that
god,
really
that's so
twists.
true.
It's
Well, I
like a
mean, and
dagger.
geez, Lapis is just
A
chilling on the
mirror.
ground.
She's just a mirror.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. Well, I mean, that's something that I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I just think it's so interesting that Steven throughout the series like accelerates this growth in these gems so fast because I mean their whole species is based upon like being alive for thousands and thousands of years. Like it's a drop in the bucket for them.
Mm.
Yet like and this is thousands of years of them staying the same and then like he's able to use humanity to just completely like open up a new way of living to them like very
Very
quickly too.
rapid change, yeah.
Yeah, very very rapid change which like I get there's no perfect way to do that but I just found that interesting.
Yeah, so I totally agree. Uh, it's funny because I'm like, I do want to have these conversations about like the whole entirety of the
Yeah, but I
series,
don't
but at
want
the
to
same
get like
time,
I know
yeah,
I keep wanting to talk more about it but I'm trying to stop myself
this is
but
supposed to be like an episode by episode. I have to just keep my mantra should just be, all right, let's just focus on this episode and like a little bit
yeah
of talking about uh like future events. But so
yeah
how would you let's move on to like sort of a rating. Like how would you rate this? I personally think it was pretty good. I think I'd say it's a very good Steven episode. I haven't
Like
come up with like a fun like rating system yet.
I would I would give it a conscientious and dependable on its report card. uh, like that, I thought it was perfectly good. It did a great job of introducing these characters. It did a good job of kind of setting up some themes of the show. The art, it comes into its own a little bit later with the characters specifically. I think the backgrounds always looked great.
Yeah. And that's one
Uh,
thing I was almost shocked to return to. I mean, obviously, like, when cartoons are planned, like, there's very strict things that they go into planning, but the music of this episode and the backgrounds and that, all of those aesthetic elements are, like, so consistent, which are just, like, to me, it's one of the reasons why I love the series so much.
oh
It
yeah.
has an atmosphere that it's immediately captured in this episode. It's like a place that you'd want to go to. Like, I
Oh, I
want to
mean,
go to Beach City.
exactly. I love that. I love beach town vibe from the get
Yeah.
go. So just yeah, the atmosphere is so just like calm and peaceful when you just like take a look at some of the. I mean, like geez, like the ending reel when it's just like the laundry flowing with this
Love it.
beautiful mystical statue
Yeah.
and the
Oh, that's so
waves.
cool.
It's just
Dude,
like
Steven Universe is so cool.
it's so good. um, but yeah, like it just something about and like you said, the music. I mean, I love piano. I love like well done. Just like
It's very like subdued,
yeah,
synthy.
subdued.
I
Exactly.
remember it might have been like when the first or second season had just finished. Someone on the internet was like, "Oh, the person that does all of Steven Universe's music just puts all the sounds on their fuck, what's it called?
SoundCloud.
SoundCloud, yeah." And so I would just went on and it was like, "Oh wow, there's just like every Steven Universe like background." I'm talking about like the background songs, not like the singing character ones.
Yeah, yeah. But oh crap, I didn't realize. I didn't even know that.
I don't know if it's still up, but at that time I was like, "Oh my god, this is awesome!" Because I love like I don't know what you'd call that music, but it's got like such a like it has like
Lo-fi
the warmth
chill
of a
beats.
synth. It kind of is.
Yeah.
It kind of is like even though I hate that I could go on a rant about how the lo-fi term hip hop beats does not make sense, but
Yes, but
but yeah, no, it's like one of those things that I really cherish about the series, and I uh it's funny because I think that a lot of like there's a lot of I guess we can talk about like how people hate the show. There's a lot of people that really hate Steven Universe, and I think they're just really like fixated on like the few elements, but there really is so much into this show that is so like well crafted, and there I guess a good thing to like say is just or to kind of ribbon this discussion tie up
yeah.
is that this is just there's so much love put into the show.
Yes. There's so much care and love and just general enthusiasm for the show. I thought Rebecca did a great job of like pouring her heart into it.
Yeah. And it doesn't feel cynical or like
No.
half-hearted. And if people have like come really hard down on the show, but it's like I think it's a testament to how emotionally honest it is. And I don't know if you've ever seen any. I just happened to see. I think it was one of the scenes of the movie. There was like a screen test where the storyboards had been done and they were like put into order, like filmed into order, and Rebecca was voicing all of the lines as like showing the other animators the sequence. And just seeing her like go through this scene that I'm sure probably took hours and hours to get to that point, and still having so much emotion when she's voicing the characters, and then it goes into like a song, and it's just it's really cool to see people in the industry that are like that.
Yeah, and care about their work, and like you said too, I appreciate that it's an optimistic show.
Oh
like,
yeah, totally.
it's sending a lot of very positive messages to its audience, which definitely helps kids work through a lot of emotional growth. I'm sure in a healthy outlet. I thought.
Yeah, in a time where a lot of the media, thinking back to like the early 2000s media, very cynical, a lot of dark undertones. Not saying that dark and cynical media is bad,
No,
but it definitely
but
became kind of like a trend, like a meme, if you will. Like it was just like, okay, we have to do it this way. But then Steven comes in, and Steven does have a lot of like darker or like more serious moments. But I think the way that they're handled, and like I was thinking this too, like how the show has such a stagnant, like chill vibe for most of it. But when there is a heightened scene, like it feels more punchy because you've been lulled into this like chill atmosphere, or like these darker scenes, they come at you and like you weren't expecting it. Like it, one thing that like it's an earlier on scene, the one episode where Amethyst shapeshifts into Steven's mom.
Oh my god, yeah.
I remember that scene. I was like, holy shit! Like that scene is like that is gonna fuck Steven up, and we do see
that's dark. Like
it is. It is something so weirdly dark that you can only really contextualize within the series. Oh, just like based on like how the mechanics of it work. But it's such a powerful scene. You instantly get this horrible like feeling in your gut, like ugh.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I mean, the fact that like, the show is in many instances it's just like, very positive, very chill, but then you do it makes those darker moments just A, more serious, and B, just like strike harder. And it feels real, like that's what I like about it. Like I don't know, it just makes those moments feel real, hit much closer to home than I think they would otherwise.
Yeah, I think the emotional or like the amount of emotion that is put into the characters of the show does make it definitely feel more real. Like I think that contributes a lot. It's not about having like realistic characters. I mean, half the characters of the show are colored like bright blue or like dark green. Like they're not relatable in that sense, but it's a test of good writing that they can be relatable in other ways.
Yes. Yeah, I definitely agree. And one last thing, we are going to keep a couple little counters of things during the show.
Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah. So I will be keeping a counter of anytime somebody hugs another person, just hugs in general. So we're going to update that.
I thought of a good name for this segment, even though we don't have an official name for the podcast yet. I thought of a good name for this segment. We can call this the Hugs Report, and then what I am doing, I'm keeping track of every time Steven cries, which will be extensive, I'm sure. So this will be the Hugs and Cry Report section.
Love it. Hug and cry.
So you said that we've had at least one hug, right?
Yes, I had my list the last time. I need to check, but I will update at the beginning of the next episode with the exact amount. But
and yes,
and just to clarify, do your cries constitute like comedic crying, anything like that, or is it just serious cries? Or
my one hard and fast rule is going to be tears. If tears exist, if tears show up, that is a Steven cry. Okay. So we do see one tear. I believe it is literally one tear at the end of the episode when Steven breaks his cookie cat, and after he's eaten them all, he's like burying one of the wrappers in the ground. Which, okay, Steven, that's litter. Yeah. First off, you say you're such a...
your mother teach you? Yeah.
Yeah, disgusting. But so he does cry because Amethyst makes fun of him, and he says like, "I only cried a little." Still counts.
Still counts.
Still counts.
Fair. And for me, hugs constitute both hands around the back. None of that one-handed shit. Doesn't matter any amount of time, but both hands clasped around the back.
So yeah, if we miss any of these, please take us to task for it.
Destroy us. Just I want to be... End me. Just,
You want to be shattered.
Yeah, just
shatter Tom.
Get Bismuth. Have her cook up something. Shatter me.
The what's it called? What's that weapon called? It's called like the
Star Shatter? No.
It's called like the
Shatter
something point. Yes. Okay, I believe it's the Shatter Point. Yeah, just have that right in my actual human heart and just blow me away. All right, so I'm gonna leave us with a little question, actually, and this is more for Tom. I don't care about the viewers. I mean, you can also you can chime in too, but I want to know what your gem sona is.
Oh, God. Okay. Like you want like full gem type.
Oh yeah, what gemstone are you? What color? And then what do you look like?
Oh God! All right.
You don't have to answer now. This is a very big question.
Yeah, God, I'm gonna have to mull over this. I mean,
because I was trying to think of like how we're gonna market this, currently nameless podcast, and I thought like maybe I should draw like gemstones of us, and that could be the cover.
Oh, that'd be
kind of funny. But it would also give people the wrong expectation. Be like, oh, is this a podcast of two girl hosts? I'm like, nope.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and whoever's listening to this, if you have any suggestions for the name of the podcast.
Okay, I do actually have a suggestion.
Oh, yeah?
I wanted to
Yeah?
float it by you on air. I thought it'd be fucking funny.
Do it.
So, I'm just gonna throw it out. I just want your honest opinion. Reven Universe.
Reven Universe?
So it'd be like in like review, like rewatch, like RE dot dot, like sorry, like RE colon VEN.
Oh, okay. I could be about that. I see what you're going for. At first, I thought you meant like one word, and I was like,
Reven.
like Kingdom Hearts dot dot X coded
yes,
Trinity Keyblade.
Yes. So that was
Okay.
one idea I had, and I barely thought it was okay. I was thinking of like Rewatch Universe, which is like I feel like it's probably taken already.
Steven Universe and introspective.
We can't use the Gemcast because that's I'm sure that's taken.
Yeah.
We'll think about it.
We'll mull it over.
We'll mull it over.
Yeah. Though there will be a title.
Yeah, even though we're asking for people to give us a title, there will be a title when they see this, so they will already know if one of these hilarious names has been chosen or completely discarded.
And if you hate it, be sure to list that in the comments.
Yeah, maybe we should be the first podcast ever that changes its name every episode. That'd be interesting. I'm sure it'd be very easy to SEO optimize that.
Oh, God, yeah, of course. I mean, geez.
Wait, I just said
basic
SEO Yeah.
Yeah, well, I got
I just said, okay, SEO stands for search and optimization.
Yeah.
So
Optimization.
I just said the equivalent of ATM machine. All right, I think it's time for us to sign off.
Yes, and the other episodes will probably be much shorter than this. This is kind of
sincerely apologize that this episode is going to be 50 minutes long.
Sorry,
Whoops.
but it's an introductory episode. The next episodes, we promise to tackle the actual episode a little bit more, and
more
the universe a little
fashion.
bit less. But
Hey, but how can you talk about Steven without talking about the universe?
oh,
That's how we're going to end every episode now.
perfect, iconic, magical.
That's a word for it.
Okay.
All right, so I've been Jim. You can find me. Did I say my name is Jim? Yeah, I did. You can find me on Twitter. I do. My name is @KingProtus. I guess follow me. I probably won't be talking about Steven Universe, but hey, they got to plug something.
And I am Tom. Don't look for me. Don't search me.
What if someone has to call you or beep you though? How are they going to reach you?
If they want to page me, it's okay. No, I have nothing. And I am just a voice.
So yeah, I guess if you really need to reach out to Tom, I just put a comment wherever below if there is any way to comment.
Yeah, you'll get a letter in the mail a couple days later, as that'll be my response.
It will be a cease and desist letter. Or a restraining order, rather. Yeah. Makes more sense.
Be sure to smash that like and like that bell.
Really like that bell. Like just lick it too.
Lick in the comments below, and
share with your friends and family, especially people that haven't seen Steven Universe. This would be really funny to send them.
Sit down with like your grandmother and try to explain it to her, and just make her listen to us for 50 minutes.
Yeah. And just sit with her the whole time. And like when she starts to get up, just put your hand on her knee and just say like, no.
Yeah, like calmly but firmly, you know.
Yes. You don't want to break any kneecaps.
Yeah, God. No.
All right, so I'm going to say goodbye now.
Yes, all right. This has been fun, and looking forward to talking more about Steven Universe.
Oh, hell yeah. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.
Bye.